podcast topic, management versus training.
Dun, dun. Got to crack the knuckles on this one.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't know how deep we want to get on that. I mean, this is a topic, obviously, that can be discussed to the end of time.
Yeah.
Right? But let's define the two terms first, right? Management. What is management? Management is the issues that your dog is having, making sure you are positioning your dog where they're not able to rehearse those issues. Case in point, right?
Okay.
Puppy here, right? Obviously, puppies get into things. Puppies chew things. Puppies have accidents elsewhere. So we have him back tied right now
Yep.
to not allow him to rehearse any of those things while we're filming our podcast.
To manage.
Right? We are managing the problem. It's doing nothing to stop the problem.
Yeah.
If he wasn't on this leash, he likely would try to do one of those things at some point.
Yeah.
Right? But we have him back tied to manage him to not do that. Right? Dog attacks other dogs when they socialize. Don't let your dogs around other dogs.
Yeah.
Management, right?
Management, yeah.
Doing nothing to solve the problem, but if you do that indefinitely, you'll make sure you're managing your dog not attacking other dogs,
Yeah.
right?
I see.
Dog attacks people, having them on a muzzle anytime they're around people, right? Doesn't do anything to solve the problem, may still try to attack people, but makes sure that person doesn't actually get bit. Management, right? So anything that you need to do, dog jumps on guests when they come over.
Yeah.
Have the dog on a leash, hold the dog down with the leash to make sure they can't jump on anybody. Management, right? So it's anything that you do to make sure the dog doesn't rehearse the behavior without actually solving the problem, right? Management.
Yeah.
Training, taking the individual issues that your dog has or taking things you want to teach and actually teaching those things or teaching what your dog should do or teaching what your dog shouldn't do, right?
Yeah.
So let's break down the examples I used, right? Puppy has accidents and chews on things and gets into things. Allow the dog to have that accident so you could interrupt it and then take them outside. Let your dog try to chew the box over there like he did over the one podcast and give a correction for that so he realizes not to do it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Dog attacks other dogs, right? Know how to properly socialize your dog, put them in that situation, and be ready to give guidance when they start rehearsing negative behaviors or when they do correct things, right? So actually solving the problem, right? Dog attacks people, obviously using the muzzle still, but when they do rehearse some of these behavioral issues, knowing how to discipline when the dog tries to do those types of things, right? Again, knowing how to properly socialize them where we could build their confidence around new people, where they have a different association with them, where they don't then attack them anymore,
Yeah.
right? Dog jumps on people, correcting them for jumping, right? So in a perfect world, I always say, obedience commands, training, back ties, crates, putting dogs in other rooms, all those types of things. Those are all management techniques, right? And even our obedience commands, for the most part, are intended to manage our dog, right, from doing different things, right?
Yeah.
We use bed stays so our dogs don't jump over our guests. We use sits at doorways to make sure they don't rush through the doorways. We do all of these different things to stop the dog from rehearsing these behaviors so we could then have a baseline to work with, right? But in a perfect world, I don't want to have to micromanage my dog all the time. I don't want to have to manage my dog all of the time, right? I want my dog to understand what the rules are, so as much as I can, I allow them to just go do their own thing,
Yeah.
right? So that they understand this is right, this is incorrect, and they could just exist, right? If they're not jumping on my guests and they're not rushing out my doors and they're not biting people and they're not attacking other dogs, I don't give a shit if they lay over there or go on their bed over there or do this or do that or stay on a leash over here or this or that, right?
Yep.
I just want them to exist and know the rules, right? But we have to use management while we incrementally work through those types of things, right? I would say you can't necessarily address everything all at once. So we use management techniques while we're working on other problems. I'm using a back tie right now while I'm working on the getting into things and the having accidents and the puppy biting and stuff like that in other aspects of my day where I could have more attention on him. And then little by little, as he gets more reliable with it in the other places, I can give him more freedom in these types of situations.
Yeah.
Right? So really, that's the conversation, right? Is you use management while you're working through the actual problem.
Yeah.
Right? You don't allow your dog around other dogs while you're working on the actual socialization problem that dog has, right?
Yeah.
You don't allow your dog to be around guests if they're having issues with strangers until you're ready to start working through that issue as well.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's the topic. Now, there are situations inevitably where long-term you do have to manage your dog because there are situations where it's not appropriate for them to do things that otherwise would be perfectly appropriate. So let me give you an example of that, right?
Okay.
When I go in public with my dog, or I go to a friend's house or something like that, if I take my dog, I manage my dog almost 100% of the time when I'm in those situations, right? Because even though my dogs may be allowed to greet my guests in my house. They may be allowed to come on the furniture in my house. They may be allowed to run and play and do all those things in my house. It would not be appropriate for me to go to your house with my dogs and just let my dogs do all of those types of things.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not going to correct them for those things because they're not wrong to do them. I'm allowing them to do them elsewhere, but I'm going to manage them utilizing my training because in that situation, I'm deeming it as something that they're not allowed to do, right? They need to focus on me. They don't need to be doing all of these things that they would be okay doing, right? But are not appropriate for them to do in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? When I go to a store, right? I'm not going to obviously let my dog off leash or let them sniff on everything that they want to sniff in the freaking pet store, or let them sniff all the light bulbs and stuff like that as we're walking through Home Depot.
Yeah.
Because that's not appropriate for them to do them there. They're not doing anything wrong by doing so.
No.
But there might be somebody that has dog allergies that goes and buys that thing. There might be whatever, any number of situations where having a dog lick something or slobber on something or whatever would be inappropriate.
Yeah.
So I keep them under control in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? So, moral of the story, management. You're making sure the dog doesn't rehearse the behavior without actually stopping it. Training, you're actually teaching the dog what's appropriate and not appropriate.
Yeah. So,
very gray question, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's the topic.
yeah. But at the end of the day, you want to use both.
You want to use both, but you want to err more on the side of training, obviously.
Yeah. Because we have the same thing. When we go to her grandparents, he's not allowed on the couch. And he knows that now.
Yep.
He goes in there, doesn't even think about it. You know?
Or let me give you another example, right? I've talked about this before, right? Like when our 83-year-old grandmother comes over, right? Kate's grandmother, our dogs running around like they normally would in their day-to-day life is dangerous.
Yeah.
They could trip her, right?
Yeah.
They could knock her over, something like that. So we manage them. We use our bed stays. We use our down stays. We don't really have them free walking around and stuff like that. Not because they would be doing anything wrong if they were doing that. There's nothing to correct for, but I need them to not do that in that moment. Right?
Exactly.
So we manage them to make sure that we don't run into that problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That's pretty much it.